Good day, Scarmies. This is an overview of a bloated layout, 80% fantasy, and in the cyan, and I'm calling it violet and blue area are the realistic track layout that I had on my bucket list to do over the winter, and found that it was much more of a task than I thought. I started out with a CAD program, found the elevations to be excruciatingly difficult in the CAD program, so I went searching for a railroad modeler program, fell upon SCARM, stuck with SCARM, got into it, got into the simulator, and well, that was my winter. I've been 6 months on SCARM, so take what I say about SCARM with a grain of salt. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know this. It was fun, and it was educational and beneficial, in the hope that next winter I will actually be able to build this. Now, the cyan is Marks Lionel O gauge, and I do have that inventoried, and I do have my inventory pretty much maxed out. The violet and blue area are going to be expansion. If I do indeed build it, I'll want to make some turnouts to expand. And well, I thought, well, if I'm doing that much, why don't I just take advantage of all the space I have in the building and use the magenta and green area for the grand layout. And that was my downfall. So that got into the Atlas new track, and then the afterthought came with adding the in scale. The motif of this, and I thank Mr. Eric Siegel for his video and advice to get a theme, and I would advise any newbie to come up with a theme for your railroad layout. And this theme is one of a western U.S. state that was developing oil resources and mining resources, and then fell into decline, and the economy changed, and well, then that's where the green and magenta areas came into play, and the railroad returned, and the mining industry returned, and lo and behold, the end scale is an all subterranean by and large, and it was an afterthought. You'll see in the simulation to come where I had difficulty squeezing the end scale between the O scale elevations, but SCARM was really good at letting me change elevations, and this layout is one where in the upper left is the high areas, the lower right the low elevation wise. There's a drawbridge for getting into the workstation in the cyan and blue and violet area. The realistic area, here it is surfaced, and this layout got so massive that I could only surface the second best setting on the rendering. So there are some visual miscues or drapings that just don't look good, and I did my best to come up with snap to objects and make corrections, but I didn't 100% get into that. Now, this is the town side, and as my compass on the layout goes, the east end of the layout, the right end, and this is the stuff that I think I can do and hope to do. So we'll be getting into the simulation shortly, and that's where I had fun, and that's where you're going to learn a lot for newbies. And I learned that the simulator does well to show me how my layout's going to operate. So here's some settings. for the simulator, and you're going to play around with that a little bit. 3D, I'm trying to eliminate as much unnecessary objects to be rendered as possible. And off we go. This will be setting up your trains. So you do this, and I've got it maxed out with 50 cars and 5 locomotives. And I can run them all on separate lines and just cut them loose once I take them to the round. Now here's the elevation profile, and you can kind of see where it is high. And the orbit is a little bit difficult in that it's always going to go to where the XYZ center. So you do have to fuss around with that a bit. I'm going to power it up, and I'm going to start these 2 trains off on the outer main lines, and it's pretty simple in terms of throwing the switches. So I do screw up later on in the video and bring one of the main lines into the yard, and there's a collision. And that's the kind of stuff that for beginners like myself, I need to get better at and understand the nuances of setting up your track and layout and running it. So part of the fun I had was what I call train jumping, and if you click on a train in the perspective view, the camera view right there, and you can jump back and forth from train to train by clicking on the trains. So we've got the 2 CP rail and the Union Pacific going on the outer. You're going to want to add reverse loops on all your lines, and you're going to want to find out what loops can fit what trains. You can actually get, here we are train jumping now, but you can actually get your train in a loop that it can't get out of, which, well, I'm going to say this a lot. As a newbie, like myself, I needed to learn that. I needed to learn that you have to run the simulator, and that's what the simulator really helped me with, is to figure out what I like, what I don't like, what works, what doesn't work. So maybe next winter I will actually get on with the construction of my layout. Now I've had that Marks Lionel track for a long time, and I am looking forward to actually building it and getting something going for my grandkids. And so we're down the main line. There's not that many switches. There are turnouts to move trains from one main line to the next, and there is one reverse loop on the inner main line, which we're in right now. We're in that cab, and so we're going to switch up ahead into the yard and then get back out onto the main line. And you can see some of the smaller tunnels and the 2-track. That's the N scale and more or less subterranean. We'll get into what's going on there and set up those trains and send them out on their way. Now we're on the outer main, and we're just train jumping, going back and forth. And it's useful on the simulator to set up your trains and see what they're seeing. So the switching back and forth is a useful tool in seeing how your layout looks, how it operates, and how you can access switches. So we'll be doing a reverse loop right here, and we're going to reverse this inner mainline train right now. and I just actually missed that switch, but I knew it looped around, so not a big deal. Off to the screen right is the mine area, and that's where most the in-scale is. You'll see the in-scale tunnel off to the right of the track here. There's a line that runs on that, and that's the higher elevation in-scale. We're coming to the old shop yard and to the town area, the residential and business area where there's business spurs and you run lower speeds there. So into what I'm calling the hub, and it does have a rough to create that effect. I found that the snap to terrain needed to be controlled in this area, so I do have a couple figures that determine the floor and the roof of this. Got the trains loaded up off the turntable and the cars all set up on the staging area or train selection area. Now these ramps that change elevations, depending on what unit you're in, I was in the ASME standard, so I'm in inches and feet, and was amazed at, in order to keep the 2.5% slope or less standard, that you need a lot of real estate. There's a couple helixes in here that assist in that. If you don't have the horizontal real estate, you can go vertical with the helix, and SCARM was awesome in building those and making adjustments to them. Another thing that you cannot do is have a turnout, a switch with different elevations. It's going to be all on one elevation. So when you throw a switch in on an elevation change, it's going to be flat there. So just be aware of that. Now we're heading to the high spot, the high line, and that will be the blue line. I think we'll speed these up, but we do set up the trains just as you would. Now this is without the surfacing, to give you an idea of the intricacies of your track and your supports. And SCARM has a way of modifying supports to accommodate what's below them and how you want to set them up. There's 4 settings, and if none work, you can just remove them. But there's arches, there's solid blocks, and there are pylons. And here's a case where the turnout is flat, and it just has to be that way. We are on a helix now, moving up, and what I like to do is to go one round on the line that I've set up just to make sure all the switches are correct, and then just let them rip. And we are back in the hub right now. Going to set up train number 2 on the in scale. We're clicking the turntable, loading the locomotive up. And one thing I've done here is add these little cylinders along the track to help me tell where I'm at. So that's a blue line. It'll go up the helix. I want the line that's going to take me down onto the floor of the hub. That will be this line right here, the green line, yellow line that leads to the magenta, cyan, and blue lines, if I so choose to go that route. So the idea of this hub is it's where most of the activity takes place. trains load up, commodity and fuel up as well. So that's kind of what's going on here. The trains in the simulator can be coupled and uncoupled at the click of the coupler, and it's pretty easy to tell. If you've coupled or uncoupled, you'll see it green right here, the arrow. Once it's coupled, it'll turn red, and all you do is click it to uncouple, and you can click them on the move. So we'll head up to the cyan line. We'll take this up to a bluff that in the simulator I discovered, and that's one thing about your layout that you're gonna like, is what you create and then taking the simulator and seeing what you discover. Is it what you expected? Perhaps it will be, perhaps it'll be good, perhaps it'll be bad, and then you just go back to your design and work it. So I would say simulate, simulate, simulate. So here's the spot that's coming up, and it's just an overlook, and you can see all the way from the west side to the east side. We'll get into the ISO view here, spin it around, and you'll see where the train is actually at that you just left. So that is it. The two O scales are running, and you're going to continue on with the cyan line in scale, and it really is a line that just runs along the rims of the bluffs, and that's what it does. It stays pretty much at a constant elevation once it's up there. And this is without the surfacing, give you an idea of what's going on. Now we are entering that line and also entering the hub. So we'll fast forward this one as well. More train to set up. You can see the blue line, the Swiss train up there, and that's the cyan line on the perimeter rim right above it. So we're out on the turntable. We're gonna set up the magenta line right now, and that is the most track for the in scale, and it goes to the town. It goes away, a ways I should say, and you can run longer trains on that. So one thing that you'll notice on all these in scales is that there's turnouts for reversing the train to bring it back into the hub here. This is really the staging area or the selection area for setting up your trains. And so you'll want to bring them back in moving forward. You don't want to, I don't think you want to be backing them up all the time. and it's the same procedure. And in your own right, you could mix and match your trains. You could get schedules or whatever they have and come up with things and do drop-offs and pickups, that type of thing. And a lot of tunnels on this line, so we'll take a look at, and I just missed a switch, and I'm going to back it up. Now I'm going to hit it, and we'll do another video speed up on the magenta line, but I think coming up is a view, without the rendering, without the surfacing. And it's down low, it's at 0 elevation, so it gives you a pretty good idea of just, if you do different elevations, what you're going to be dealing with in terms of stacking track and making sure you have your clearances and that sort of thing. That's a why that we're into right now. And this is the turnout to the town. And we'll keep looking at it. This gives you an idea. I think I get into the, we'll take a look at where this train is at on the layout. So it is right there. And you can see it's right on the baseboard at 0 elevation. And you can see the O scale running. The N scale is sort of difficult to pick up because it just pops out of the tunnels periodically and then disappears. So not that fun to look at from the non-cab camera. So we're entering the town, and I'm going to bring over the O scale at some point. I don't know if that happens at this time, but give you an idea of the ratio, the scale perspective. The tracks don't do it justice when you get the trains right next to each other. Really, the tunnels sort of do, though. But when you get the trains next to each other, you get an idea of just the difference in scale. is a much more complicated, convoluted line, and so I'll spend a little bit more time setting it up. We ran most of the track. Now we're looking at a plan view or ISO of where that magenta line is popping out, and you can see the train running along. So you can see the N scale running along with the O scale. We've got the O scale now running in two different directions, clockwise, counterclockwise, and that's about it. We'll maybe check out a couple perspectives, bring a train back in the hub, show some switching on the O scale, bring the O scale into the yard, show how you can run your O scale in the yard, 2 lines in the yard, and maybe bring the O scale into town. So the locomotives are off to the right, and by clicking them, you can see what one. Now, this is the blue line, the Swiss locomotive, and it showed a red bar at the bottom, and that's some kind of indicator that there's a condition on the track. And now we're looking at that blue line right now. It's going back into the tunnels, but it'll pop out again along, well, right where the Union Pacific train is at the top outer main line. There it is. There's the 2 of them. So you could run a perspective camera and click back and forth, train jump there if you wanted to. And here we are with the perspective view. And sometimes with the layout this massive, you're going to have to run the train perspective view just to throw a switch or uncouple or couple. Well, yeah, you're going to have to do that. So it's useful to be able to switch back and forth, to have a few extra locomotives on your simulation just in case you get in a jam. The yard locomotive, you're going to find that that's useful to have that small tug available, especially on turntables. You can I could get 2 cars and that locomotive on the turntable, as opposed to the larger American locomotives, U.S. locomotives. That's it. You get the locomotive on the turntable. You don't get a car. So I think we're going to head into the yard right now, and we'll set up an O scale in the hub. We'll send it through the hub, and it'll give you an idea of the scale difference between the N and the O. And another thing I found is that you're going to want to set a ceiling level on how far you go with the SCARM buildings. Here's a clearance problem. You can see where the N scale right above it, the blue line, is coming through the top of the tunnel on the O scale. That's not good. And so you're going to want to go back to your drawing board on that one and fix that. So that's a cyan line right above. That's an N scale up there. You're viewing it from an O scale. The CP rail locomotive, and off they go. So we're going to reverse the CP rail O scale here, and we'll take a look at that cyan on the outside again. It runs along the rim, and I think we're going to chase it around this bluff here. Just show you how many places it comes out, and there's reverse loops on all the N scales as well. So that's a reverse loop tunnel right there for the N scale. Not taking it. So this is where the O and the N scale part, and we'll take this now. This roundhouse is using tunnel for the doors. Save some time. And the buildings, yeah, like I said, you're going to not want to spend a whole lot of time on the buildings. So my plan is to continue using the SCARM to develop the design. And then when I get ready to build next winter, bring this into CAD. And I will show you a SCARM EMS export into a DXF conversion and import into CAD. It actually worked pretty good even on this bloated layout. So it is possible to bring your export your SCARM layout in EMS and convert it and then use it for the build. I think here we're going to be switching the outer main line to the inner, and we just did that there. So now we've got that outer main line ready to go into the yard, or even around. It could get on this loop to the left. So you can see the surfacing draping, and that's really what it is. If you don't like that look, you have to throw in objects and snap to that object. But it's just draping, and the more vertices, the more computer power you're going to need. As I said earlier, I found my limitation. I had reached my limitation with the amount of surfacing in this layout, and I could no longer do the very good but slow. I just couldn't do it at all. So we're gonna show here the end scale moving along, and a few places that like I spoke of the overlook that I came upon and was really surprised at how much I liked it. So this one, there is a place where the surfacing allowed me to see from the N scale to the O scale line, right where the tunnels meet. I think we're gonna take a look at that view. But a good design, I think, speaks for itself. And you'll know when you've hit it. You'll be using the simulator and thinking, well, I really want to get over to that line there. But you can't. So you go back to your design and incorporate whatever turnout or track you need to do that, and then you'll test to see if it's really good. You'll also find that there's lines you put in that you don't use, and well, if you don't use them, get rid of them. And I think the simulator is really good, and the retooling, the redesigning is a good way to get a layout that you enjoy as much as you can without going too crazy. So we're gonna see the blue line up here and move into the mine staging or selection area. There's also a staging area for the yard as well, but that's on a different elevation. I think we do have to wait a little bit here, and for that I will speed up. Now I just clicked the Swiss locomotive to see where it's at. It is on the blue line. It's on one of the helixes, and it's going to be, I don't know if that's a climb. Yeah, it's got a climb now. So it just dropped down into the hub. It's climbing back up. We will speed this one up. And here we are. You can see this black line is actually a tunnel top of an O scale. But here's our Swiss train coming through, and Union Pacific O scale up top. And again, this video is not a how-to, it's a why, and that's to have fun with your layout and use it and retool it, redesign it. One thing that I'm not really looking forward to is this drawbridge, if I ever get around to that. But this is a drawbridge. Off to the right is the workstation, basically where you run your controls. So we'll bring another O scale in and head to the town and park it there. See if we can locate the magenta line train and bring it into town as well, just to give you an idea of the scale difference between the O scale and the N scale trains. We're passing through the yard area, the old yard, into the expansion area, the reasonable expansion area, if it so develops that way once I do build. So we're parking the Union Pacific right here, and we've got to track down that magenta line. So we're taking off the surfacing, seeing where it's at, and as luck would have it, we are right by the switch. This switch goes to town, and it is a reverse loop. Also, you'll notice on the track the ballast here. That means it's exposed to the plan view, and if it's a solid track ballast, that means it's in a tunnel, so you can tell a little bit about the track. We're waiting for the magenta line to come in, and there it is, and this will give you an idea of well, perhaps not. I didn't get them facing off, and I should have taken a different route on that in-scale switch. Oh well, my bad. So here's an example of, this is the O-scale shop yard area that I do have the track inventory to build, and do intend to build. And the simulator shows me just, how tight it's going to be with just 10 cars and a locomotive. You can see coming around the corner here that I'm not going to get a whole lot of train in this layout, no matter what I do. So that O scale, it takes up some real estate versus a limited amount of train compared to the N scale. That's all I can do there. 10 cars and a locomotive, 11 total. So we just train jumped. We're gonna take this CP rail, and we're going to make sure that it's tucked away while we bring in the Union Pacific into the yard and get those loops set up. And we'll get the Union Pacific turned around and into the yard. And once we get the Union Pacific in the yard, we'll have 2 O scales in the yard, and we'll perform a relatively simple operation of moving the train, the CP rail that's in the yard, out to the main line. This will be something you'll want to do on your layout, I would imagine, and in the simulator you can practice that. You can see what works, what doesn't work, and retool if you need to. So we've got both the O-scale trains running in the yard. We've got them running on separate loops. They could run independent of each other, and you could run them that way. But we want to move that CP rail we're just passing, and we want to move that out to a main line and move the Union Pacific into a hub loop, and we'll see how that goes. You can switch to the plan view and remove the surfacing, get an idea of how your trains are running. And something to keep track of is over below the stop sign on the menu area of the SCARM simulator. You can see all the trains are running. You've had no derailments. Things must be going well. This gives you a little bit of confidence in the layout you've come up with, and should translate well into the actual build. That is why I say simulate, simulate, simulate. And that is why I'm okay with being stuck on simulating for the first 6 months of my design. This is complicated stuff, and it is relatively expensive as well. So you can keep within your budget by using the simulator, see how it works, and when you get into the actual build, the design, which I hope to get a video out of the CAD design and how you can use the CAD. The electrical component of this is another complicated facet of the model railroad, and you're going to want to be moving into that with some data, some intelligent understanding of the schematic and the layout and how the model scale railroad turnouts work and the switches handle and how you can control those. You're going to want to make access to areas of your track to do maintenance or repairs or get your trains back on track. So I think the planning is well worth the wait, and the more you plan, the better off you're going to be. So my strategy was to go big and scale down and accommodate my actual build with the things that I think are reasonable in terms of expansion, but to do the inventory, crunch the numbers, stay in budget, and accommodate with some reasonable expansion notes. Now we're sending the CP rail out on the inner main line, and we'll cut the Union Pacific loose in the yard and hub area. We have just moved the CP rail out on the main line, and it is going to do one loop, and we're satisfied that that's running well. So now we can run the Union Pacific in the yard willy-nilly without a worry. Now, the thing about blocking the SCARM, you can pretty much, now we've had a derailment here. So when I initially started running the simulator, I had derailments all the time, and it was frustrating. So I'm trying to locate what the issue is. I've neglected a switch somewhere, and there it is. I didn't follow protocol and take my CP rail one revolution, and lo and behold, there was a switch into the yard that was thrown, and well, that CP rail went back into the yard. So this is something the simulator demonstrated to me, that I need to really be more practiced at running these lines, running these trains. So we've taken care of that crash, and we're back on playtime. So we're looking at here another thing that the simulator showed me that intrigued me, and it is just this canyon right here where I get a glimpse of the cyan line, and the cyan line gets a glimpse of the O scale. And so the simulator, it does a good job of showing you just exactly how your layout is going to work. And you can see that the tunnel clearances are not good. The track clearances are not good with the elevation changes, where we've got the tolerances really not adhered to. So you can retool that as well and I would if I was actually going to build this portion of the layout. But here we are moving into that canyon, and there it is. So we're train jumping right now, and that's it. It's a small thing, but again, the model railroad is about, spurring on the imagination. And the simulator, though, you don't want to live in the virtual world in your model railroad, heaven forbid. It does give you an idea of how you can improve your layout and what you want to include in your layout, in your model railroad. Do you want to keep it to a prototypical type scenario, or do you want to move into a little bit more of an imaginative sort of layout? And that'll be up to you to decide what you want to do. And when you move into the fundamentals of actually how you're going to do this in the real, you'll have a better idea of how to do it, and costs. And with any computer program, garbage in, garbage out, you want to be as specific in your technical application through the computer in order to achieve that goal in the build, in the real. So nothing wrong with a little bit of time in the design. And you can see here we are in the tunnel, and the track indicates that, as well as the surfacing tunnel. Now we're bringing the magenta line in, and it does have a couple reverse loops and a Y to turn the train around, but it's so close right now, we're just going to back it in. And we're going to throw a switch here and back the magenta train into the yard. So this is a procedural thing that I wanted to sort of get an idea of operational things. And so I'll start my session with a train setup. I'll run the trains, I'll throw some switches, I'll try to move the trains around, and then I'll want to put the trains away. And it is going to give me a better layout when I actually do the things that trains do. And I'm going to promote, I guess, Eric's trains. Those videos help me a lot. And there's another one, Heiss. He's an engineer, a civil engineer, works for railroads and has a fantastic understanding of track and train and operational things, and speaks from an engineering mind to a layman's ability to understand grade and elevations and all the things that railroads encounter and then a better understanding of how your model works. Now we're running couplers here. We're decoupling that. You saw it go from red to green, and that's just a simple operation in SCARM. We're moving this locomotive, and you can see a screen right below the stop sign which one it is. It's the No Name Railroad, and we're going to park it somewhere, and we're going to be looking for one of these black lines, which means that there's a bumper at the end of it, and it's just going to stop. But we'll take it out here, and we'll be able to see our Swiss line, our Union Pacific. We're going to back the Union Pacific up a little bit here, and now have a look at the CP rail. So we've got all our lines in. We've got all our trains. We didn't decouple cars and do any setup that way, but the whole idea of the simulator is really simulate the operation of your layout and get an idea of what it's able to do. We'll look at some CAD stuff hopefully in another video, and the complexities of the build, and that's about it.